we have a pretty awesome agenda. I will say it wasn't what we had originally planned. So a little background. We were going to have the project director for Georgia come and speak with us, Karen Sudeth, and she had an emergency in her family this week and then some ongoing health needs she was helping to take care of. And so some of you may remember Laura Brown used to be the project director in Georgia. And she eventually, she's still with the SPDIG, but she moved away from that job. She built the capacity in others to take over those roles, thought about sustainability, and she kindly offered to step in today. And we're still going to hear from Karen in this series. We're not sure which month yet. We'll still hear from Karen, but today we're going to hear from Laura. And then the other half of the webinar, if you read your newsletter this month, you would have known it was supposed to be Karen Sudeth, and then the other half was going to be Karen Erickson from UNC, who created the Tar Heel Reader. And she was going to come tell us about some new tools for that. And then they are waiting. They are developing some really important tools that are going to be ready in 45 days or less than that, 30 days. And so she said, could we just hold off a little bit so I actually have something to give people that they can use right away? To which we said, yes. And Laura said, well, what else can I do? And she works with the coaches for the SPDIG. She oversees the coaching efforts. And I said, people are really interested in hearing more about coaches since we don't have the coaching committee of practice meeting right now. And so she said she would take that on, created a whole presentation in 1 or 2 days for us from, she did a lot of work with coaching. So she had the materials, put it all together for us, put together all the questions, all the thinking. So she did all this in the last 2 days. So I just want to give Laura Brown, even before she presents, a big round of applause for stepping up, stepping in, and doing so just like, so we're very lucky to have her here. Before we can get to that, I do have a couple of good announcements to share with you. All right, so just a reminder, we're now in this series where we're interviewing project directors, typically project directors from the SPDIGs, the What I've Learned So Far series. So we are well into that. The virtual national meeting, we asked in the survey, the post-event survey for the program area meeting, when you wanted to have it. You said February 8th and 9th works best for you since it's virtual and we don't have to worry about snow. And so we are going to hold it then. Next year, we will go back to face-to-face, but this year there weren't enough states that were allowing their folks, the state departments of education there weren't enough of them allowing their folks to travel out of state. And so it just wasn't a safe expenditure of funds. So we are going to wait on that. We have made to stick books for anyone who's interested to prepare for the meeting. Please do, you can just put your email address in the chat or send it, do a direct chat with Kelsey, or sorry, not email address. You can do a direct chat with Kelsey right now to give her your mailing address, or you can email her at signetwork@uoregon.edu and we will send you the book. Our working groups are evolving. Kelsey has been sending out emails to folks who were previously in our working groups and the new folks who want to be, and we'll start to have our meetings in the time that folks have said works best for them. Shorthand is a way to present your information, your materials. You can have video, you can have visuals, really fun descriptions. It's how Kelsey puts together our newsletter every month. You all get that for free through, so to speak, through SIG Network, the license, and you'll get support from Kelsey and support from Shorthand because we have that kind of license. So be thinking about whether you want that resource. We have connected mentors with mentees. In the last month, we heard from you in the survey, the post-event survey, if you wanted a mentor or if you were willing to be a mentor also. So we've connected folks. If you have not been connected and you still want a mentor or are willing to be a mentor, please do email me directly or Kelsey. Website improvements, we're continually working on that. If you have ideas for us or something that works really well or something that doesn't work, again, let myself or Kelsey know, please. We do have a question today from South Dakota. I've got it here for you if you want to read it, but Brandy, do you want to share the question you have for other folks?
Sure. Yeah, so we've been working towards development of an MTSS data website for our districts where they can upload their data and their reports and then, or upload their data, I should say, and then have it generate reports. We had a vendor that we had started working with and going through the contract process, but found that with our technology requirements, with security and things like that, they weren't able to meet the expectations for that. So I was just wondering if there are other states who have some kind of an MTSS data system and how you went about developing that. If you had an outside vendor that you worked with, or if it was something you developed internally. And then also if there are any lessons that you learned through that process of things that you wish you had included or things that you think need to be included or things to avoid. So any feedback or advice that you could share would be fantastic.
Brandy, do you want to put your email address in the chat, or do you want them to email me and then I'll connect to you? It's up to you.
I can put my email in the chat. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Okay, great. Well, thanks for sharing that. And thanks for all the folks who are going to be helping you, I am sure. Yeah, I see that. All right. So South Dakota. All right, tool of the day. We started this new aspect of the director's webinars where we're going to share a tool each time. And Kelsey found these fun tools. Some of you have probably already seen them. I feel like I've heard of them before, but maybe forgot about them. The untools. And one of the tools they have is the ladder of influence, which some of you may have heard. Looks pretty cool. I think just the ways that they share them. I think collaboration, problem solving, just different ways to meet. Be interested in hearing if any of you have used any of these before, what worked for you. If you want to add that to the chat, I think it could be helpful in giving other people ideas. All right, UDL standards for professional learning. I think these are fairly new. This is from Learning Designed, which CAST supports. University of Kansas is part of that as well. I wanted to share these with you. It's just, I think it's helpful for us because of the work we do in professional development to know the different standards that are out there. And I think there's always something we can learn from that, right? Something that's not part of evidence-based professional development or rubric, the essential features and what we expect in them. There's always something new to be learned. Whether or not we someday integrate them into the rubric, into what is expected for SPDIGs, I think that's a conversation that we always should be considering. So some of the things that I liked, because one of the working group, let's go back a little bit. So the working group that we have for MTSS that's focused on synchronous and asynchronous learning, and we call it modules for short, because there's a lot of module people or states creating modules. One of the ideas that came up in that group is thinking about UDL when it comes to creating modules. So are we giving people different ways to access the information? Or maybe we're thinking professional development generally. UDL for professional development. Is there different ways to access it? Are there different ways to show their learning? Haven't really heard that in conversation. Maybe you all have. I'm not in all the conversations you're having. But it's my thinking. These professional standards don't necessarily get into that as much as I was hoping they do. But I did still like some of the things I saw in them. And so I thought, you got the link in the PowerPoint and I can also add it to the chat. But I liked this, especially reducing barriers in anticipation of staff variability. So thinking, especially now, what's happening, how can you reduce any barriers in the professional development you're providing? And I know you're already thinking that way. And then if you've got professional goals, what are different pathways to getting there? What are your options and choices that you're providing to your participants? And then also, this is important, UDL is becoming an expert in something, right? Mastering it completely. And how do the practices and strategies that you're supporting in your professional learning, how do they promote expert educators? And this is the job embedded aspect. How are you supporting them and using data to inform continuous support plans? And are you providing authentic problems of practice? Just a few big ideas there, and you can delve into it a little more deeply. Kelsey, if you have that link, would you pop it in the chat? If not, I can do it in just a minute. All right, so now we get into, that was just the appetizer. Now we get into the real content with Laura. And as I'd said before, she was very thoughtful. She knew that she was trying to work herself out of the project director's job, and she was developing capacity in the folks who worked on the SPDIG, and also always thinking about district and school capacity and how the state was supporting that. And now she's moved into the role of facilitating the coaching for the SPDIG. But first, we're going to start with the interview portion, the what I've learned so far portion, and she's going to be focused on sustainability and a few other questions that you all have had. You know, these are the questions that you said were burning for you when you responded to that survey. And then after that, you're going to have a chance to be in a breakout, consider some questions about coaching. And then she has some information she's going to share with you about the kind of training that coaches need and different kinds of coaches need. So that's just to prepare you for today and how it's going to go. So Kelsey, can you go ahead? I think Laura and I are probably already spotlighted for the interview. Start.
You're both.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So Laura, thank you again for being willing to participate in this conversation, for getting everything together so quickly, and for doing a fantastic job. I'm really happy to have you here. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? And those of you who have been with us before, which I think are most of you, she's going to use the 4 H's, which we've been using a lot lately. So welcome, Laura.
All right, thanks so much. Well, for my history, I started out as an elementary special education teacher, teaching in resource classes at the time and teaching reading, and I was happy. I loved it. I felt prepared and a strong reading teacher, but I was naive and I was young, and that with just someone else's decision, I turned from that bouncy, couldn't wait to get to school, 20-year-old teacher every day, jumping out of bed, thinking about my students, to really being disheartened. And it was all because one teacher left and there was a staff shuffle. So I know right now in all your districts and schools, they're grappling with this, the staff shuffle. How are we going to do it? How are we going to meet it? Do we have enough personnel? And in that shuffle, I got assigned to teach math. I didn't know how to teach math. I felt inadequate. I felt lost. I didn't have that same confidence that I had. And that's my heartbreak. I felt like my students knew it, everybody knew it, and I knew I needed a change. And so about that time, this really dates me, computers were coming out. We were dealing with educational technology. And although I hadn't touched one ever or had one, I decided I would learn about that. And I spent a summer doing ordering computers and putting them in schools, and got hired to as a special education consultant. Among a lot of other responsibilities at the central office, I coach teachers on how to use computers in their classrooms. So that led me along that path to just a myriad of leadership roles: assistant principal at elementary school, a professional learning specialist, a regional director of a center focused on students with disabilities. And all that led me to an interest, continuing that interest in reading, and how adults learn and how do they take action on what they learn. I got the privilege to be in the system when Joyce and Showers were doing their research. And so that was happening partly in Georgia, and I became part of that. And then I also was moved into being a consultant, and then the project director, focused on graduation. It wasn't just reading. We were in our region in the mountains of North Georgia, we were losing so many students to drop out. So I really focused on that for about a decade. And so then I stepped into this role, and I'm really happy. I really enjoy supporting the coaches. A couple of my heroes are Karen Suddeth, and she really brings this vibrant vision and enthusiastic spirit to the work, and really challenges all of us on the team to be relevant and aligned and connected in Georgia. And I really appreciate that. But I also have to tip my hat and really say something about Julia Causey, who was my previous SPDIG project director. And anybody of you who, she was in Alabama before she was with us in Georgia. And she had a grace and a gentle approach to leadership. And I learned a lot from her. She tamed my impatience a bit. I had what I would describe now as professional impatience, wanting things to happen quickly. So two of my hopes are that I hope that all of you will get involved with the SIG network, actively participate in more than just the monthly webinars, but really volunteer to share your work and to share your ideas, be on planning committees. It's really invaluable. And I know you're thinking right now, all of you, I'm looking at your faces, and you're saying, oh my gosh, I do not have the time. I don't have another minute to spare. But you will get so much out of that. And Julia really introduced me to this network, and I can't say enough about it. The other hope is that I'd scan and look to see who may need help, and reach a helping hand and offer to help.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And so for those of you who are new, the 4-H's, in case you didn't catch each one, is history, heroes, heartbreak, hope. We can change the order, but that's the big idea. And we borrowed that from T. Rowe Price. So thank you so much for sharing that with me. It made me think, as you're talking about your history, when you became a math teacher and it wasn't immediately a good fit for you, how much the tough times, those problems create in, probably quite a few of us here, it creates the desire to fix that problem, or to at least approach fixing that problem, which brings us to really good work, right? So they definitely have a use. Like I always say, if I had been a fantastic teacher right away, probably wouldn't be here today. I'd still be a teacher. But yeah, we're so glad that you're here, and thank you for sharing. All right, so we have some good questions. As you all know, we have a series of questions that came from you all, everyone here, that you were interested in, and then the person being interviewed gets to choose which questions they're most interested in. So the first question is, Laura, how did you plan for sustainability from the beginning? And the beginning being a little ways back at this point, the SPDIG before. How did you plan for sustainability from the beginning?
I did, but if you don't mind, I'll just take just a moment just to share about our work now. We're focused on MTSS and building that infrastructure, because that's going to be really important to my sustainability part. And the focus on building the infrastructure at the state, regional, district level, as well as that professional learning that's needed to support schools as they implement to improve instruction and have a really positive school climate. So those are our goals. We have 3 cohorts. I think we have about 22 districts and just shy of 60 schools. And these participating districts and schools, they choose what they want to focus on, because they came to us already doing some of the work. So it wasn't just focused on, we didn't just pick reading at that time, but they could choose reading, math, and or behavior. Some of them chose to implement all three, as well as our small but mighty team. And we had some unique things there, that we have our project director and someone in charge of research and evaluation, as well as our communication, parent family engagement specialist, and our regional coaches, and me as the coaching coordinator. We have that traditional training of essential components, the assessments and all those pieces. But as I'll go into later, we have some deeper pieces as well. And while I'd say our family engagement is sometimes it's not as consistent as we'd all like to see, we do have some exemplars, and we've developed some good tools, how systems and schools actually use those tools or develop their own. That's always different. And we have a very strong communication plan and a communication specialist, and who champions our social media and our videos. So we also have online PL modules, like many of you. We've developed some coaching tools. And what is also unique to us, we have Go MTSS SST, Brandy, and that is a platform, but it's connected to our Go IEP process. But that has been such a strong PL teaching tool for our process. So that being said, in the beginning for our sustainability, we were focused on implementation. We were just trying to get off the ground, train all these people, get it all together. But we knew very quickly that if we didn't focus on that section of infrastructure that was really a part of our implementation rubric, if we didn't give that strong focus, and I knew from previous grants, and some of our coaches came from that work, it all shreds apart. Instead you're investing in an individual. And when you do that, even if they have some team, or they think they have a team, in a year, that staff shuffle could refocus that, and they may not be there anymore. So
is that a saying that sorry to interrupt you, is that a saying that you all use, like investing in an individual versus investing in the structure? Because that just kind of caught me, like that idea.
Really?
Like,
I just said it. I don't know.
You might want to use
I might better write that down.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
But I do believe that the infrastructure is what keeps us going. So what we did was we started embedding in every coaching session. So we met with our coaches every month. We devised what we would put in the agenda. We devised some questions. We put it in every single one. That helped. Was moving us in the right direction. So if we're talking about screening, we're talking about the infrastructure needed to support screening. If we're talking about progress monitoring, we're talking about that. And that was moving us in the right direction. But we had an experienced coach on part of our team, and she looked at that very critically, and she challenged us, and she said, this is not enough. We're going to have to do more. And our Karen Sudduth, who had been in other grants as well from a different perspective, she had done sustainability to work, and she said we have to formalize our processes. And what we really looked at, went out, and I was observing, and I came back and I said, well, I know it's really multifaceted, but I understand what the issue is. Number one, we're owning these conversations. We are directing them. We are doing the questions. They're not passively, but they're answering us, but they are not owning this as a process. Number one, it's so big, sustainability. What aspects do you really address? It is too big for any one person. And so we didn't have somebody accountable for that at the district or the school level. And so we were struggling. We developed a process, put some caveats together, put that we would really focus on some details. We sort of under like context and culture, organizational capacity, performance processes, and we put all those together. And my gosh, we lumped everything in there and tried to start thinning it out. It was harder than I realized, because what part do you leave out? What questions do you ask? How do you lift it up big enough and elevate it so it can work at the entire state, but make it have a contextual fit? So that's what we struggled with at the time. We didn't have a lot of tools to look at. Now there are tools. I recommend other tools that have reliability and validity to them, but this was just us working through our process. It made us really understand that nitty gritty, what's important in Georgia, what do we really believe in, what do we think we need to have. So we established leadership as our foundational piece and said all of this is really important. And then we have under context and culture, we have things like vision, collective efficacy. We really believe in that. That idea of alignment and partnerships and communication. We also had under organizational capacity, we had what we really believe in teaming and professional learning and coaching, resources and networking. Oh, I see that question for a graphic. Guess what? I put those slides for you in the next section. I won't talk about them much, but they're there for you. And so this was all in our fidelity rubric. These were not pieces that were unique, but we needed to be able to talk about not what has just happened or what you're just about to do, but what are you going to do over the next 3 to 5 years, and how are you going to sustain the work? In performance processes, these are the things like strategic planning and database decision making and maximizing those resources. Those were the things that we had. We also had like database decision making. How are you going to sustain that over time? And district coordination. We really believe someone at the district has to be responsible, has to be accountable. And how do you build capacity and maximizing resources? So we put all that together, and now the coaches talk about, we did a training and follow-up coaching, and we had a list of some questions in the most simplistic template you ever saw. It really wasn't the paper that made the difference. It was have those conversations, and they had it so that they could do those independently. And then we could come together and coach them and facilitate those. So now coaches talk about the districts and the schools, they're ready for sustainability, or they're in sustainability. And I'm not going to say we don't still have concerns about it, because we do, but at least we have a process and a way of talking about it.
Do you think, Laura, just a follow-up question, do you think it's harder to get districts to think about a 3-year, 5-year plan at this point?
It is hard, but if you have a team that is like on fire or welcoming that conversation, they're going to go there. They were already having some of those conversations, sketching them out, real messy plans. You know, I like to see those. They're writing up the side and what to do, but sometimes they don't believe that they're going to have stable staff, and that, you know, is my superintendent leaving next year? Are we changing? Is our principal going to be reshuffled? How's that going to happen? So they worry about things like that. So it does make it harder.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing that graphic too, by the way. So this is gonna be fun.
I think we have a
So
poll.
we do have a poll. Good. Which of these areas is your biggest challenge with sustaining your SPDIG work? Okay, so everyone be thinking about which area is your biggest challenge with sustaining your SPDIG work. And Kelsey's going to put up a poll and you're going to get to choose. Is it context and culture, performance processes, or organizational design? And since you put these questions together, Laura, will you explain what you, just a little bit of
Sure.
what for each?
Sure. So in context and culture, that's your visioning, your collective efficacy, your alignment, partnerships, and communication. In performance processes, that's your strategic planning, your database decision making, your district coordination, building capacity and maximizing resources. And organizational design, that's teaming, professional development and coaching, resources, and networking.
That's funny enough. Let people think through it for a second. All right. So we have performance processes at 45%. Interesting. I really didn't know what the answer was going to be. What did you think it was going to be, Laura?
We are usually pretty close, you know, when we ask our district. So I didn't really know nationwide what it would be, but I do understand those challenges, you know, and it's what we work on in the SPDIG all the time. Having that professional development that's going to last. And how do we onboard new personnel when we have so many and we have to, there's so much training, the teaming, how are we going to get the coaching done?
Yeah, good. All right. Okay, so our second question is about implementation teams. So again, these were areas that people have said that they really related to MTSS, I'm sure related to other work as well, areas that they really needed some good thinking about. So about implementation teams, what do implementation teams look like for your project?
Well, very much like Brandy described last month, we have linked and cascading teams. And so we have a state implementation team and we have a lot of representation from the state. We organize it and host it, and they all come together and we share ideas, what's new going on, so that we're all aware. Any new training that we have going on, it's universal, especially since we're virtual and space isn't an issue. A lot of them will come or send people or districts they're working with and send them to our training. So it's a real positive networking meeting. So whether it's our Office of Whole Child Supports, you know, federal programs, school and district effectiveness, Title I ESOL, special education, our literacy, math, PBIS, is a big meeting, but it works very well. We have regional consortia. I wouldn't say every single region has one, and sometimes they rise up and then they collapse for a little while and we'll see them rise back up. But we always have a regional coach supporting them, and it's networking and sometimes professional learning.
Can I ask you a clarifying question about that? So are these, are they cooperatives or are they education service?
They're RESAs. Most of them are RESAs. So those aren't really exactly cooperatives like others, but they are, that's how our regions are designed in Georgia.
Okay, thank you.
So, and RESA is Regional Educational Service Agency.
Yeah.
Like the one in my region in North Georgia, it's really a whole child consortia with MTSS and PBIS and wraparound services because we're small mountain counties, and it was the same director in the district for each one. So they asked, can we just come to one a month and let's just focus on everything we're working on? So that worked out really nicely.
Great.
Then we also have district and schools. That's mandatory in our project. You have to have a district team and a school team. Sometimes those are repurposed teams. Sometimes it's an agenda item on a leadership team with a working team, really the implementation part happening with a smaller group. And our regional coaches oftentimes in the districts facilitate those initially, and then they coach the coaches to facilitate them themselves. So they might work on agenda items, help bring together agenda, get tools ready. Maybe they'll do a little part. But you think about it, that in a school, sometimes that coach is a third grade teacher half the day and trying to do MTSS after lunch, and never really led a team before. So we have to build team capacity. We have to help them understand the link team process, as well as what does it take to run a team, as well as setting and meeting team goals, and how do you do that? So that's a lot of work.
When you say linked teams, this is linked communication and data sharing. Is that
Exactly
the basic idea?
So I think I think I saw it first in Steve Goodman and then in the active implementation hubs, but the stair steps of them going up and all linked together. So communication can flow up and down, and very often our regional coaches are the conduit for that.
Yeah, great. Very good. All right. Zipping on through. So our next question is about alignment. Raise your hand if you have alignment challenges at your state, everywhere, right? This includes the federal level. So how have you approached alignment? So thinking about other state initiatives, which you just brought up quite a few of them. So I think you partially answered this question already. The district initiatives, you talked about the small rural district, and one person might be wearing a lot of these different hats, right? We've talked before, I think I even might have brought it up when Brandy was being interviewed, the specific like social emotional learning. So everyone's got this piece of social emotional learning in all these different pockets, like aligning that, or the different kinds of measures that folks are doing. How are you approaching alignment, Laura? Or have you in the past?
Well, I will say we just recently, our team got moved to the Office of Whole Child Supports in an effort to do this alignment. We were in the Division of Special Education Services and Supports, and the team got moved to the Office of Whole Child Supports. And so I think that was in the fall of 2021. And so within that, we have mental health and well-being, integrated wellness, school safety, Georgia's tiered system of supports, which is our team, the Georgia MTSS. And we are working and how to work together and knowing more. I've learned so much more about the work and the deep, rich things that are going on I didn't really know. So that has been helpful. We have a joint, we've really worked with PBIS, and that's ebbed and trying to align ourselves with other tiered systems of supports. We have a dyslexia initiative, we have PBIS, and we had not this summer, but the previous summer, we had a joint MTSS PBIS conference that was well attended and seemed to be appreciated. We work collaboratively with federal programs and other divisions and offices. and we try to, especially literacy, math, and behavior, but that's what we're working on. But we try to model that for our districts and schools and encourage our coaches, encourage them to replicate some of those activities. But I'm dreamy. And anybody who knows me knows I dream big, and aligning just isn't enough. I want to be integrated. I want to be hand in hand partners, and we are. And I think if by building those alliances, we have relationships, and they seem to ebb and flow as people move and shift roles. But if we are truly building those alliances, we'll not only increase our implementation, but it'll aid our sustainability. And if we'll all have the same language and be able to share the same information.
Yeah, I noticed this, and this isn't something that you and I talked about before the interview, but I noticed in a lot of states, the curriculum instruction office seems to be the hardest one to make inroads with. I'm sure it's not uniform across states, but do you have any recommendations about how to work with that office?
Well, when we were in the Division of Special Education Services and Supports, we actually had a person who was assigned to teaching and learning in literacy and mathematics. And so they really came and shared rich information at our team. And so as we've had more people focus on math, they've had a numeracy project both at elementary and secondary, and that we have really been supporting as our participating cohort districts and schools reach out and start to offer that. But I know it's hard.
Yeah.
We don't have any magic answers.
Yeah, no, but that's good. So, I mean, somebody who starts to internalize isn't the word I'm looking for. I can't think of it, but like they start seeing it's like as their work as well, because they are existing within both. I think that's a good idea. It's helpful. Thank you.
And as their handbooks are being rewritten or revised, they're reaching out, or we're asking to be included and to have a piece in that. And that's what we encourage our districts and schools to scan their, when we're talking about for sustainability, to scan every piece of professional learning. And can MTSS be integrated into that? And can you talk about it?
Yep. A long conversation, right?
Yes.
Not a quick fix. Good. All right. So Fidelity, you mentioned a bit about your measurement when you're first kicking things off. And we also talked about how that's challenging for people, this performance aspect of it. But I also think there's a nice connection with the conversation about alignment and integration, because you were talking about PBIS and MTSS, like the processes are the same, right? And so where can you build efficiencies? You already need to have coaches. You already need to have maybe some systems coaches and some instructional coaches. So where can you build efficiencies with training coaches or with, the coach's manual and things like that? And so it just gets me thinking about the process of fidelity measurement and where you could also be more efficient there. But tell us about your fidelity system.
We use the district and school implementation fidelity rubric. We originally, it's on the Center of Multi-Tiered System of Supports. I think that's the name of it. It's MTSS for Success is the website.
Got it.
Yeah. And it is, and in fact, I just checked today to make sure it was still there. The link to we adapted it for Georgia, and the link to our adapted one is on their website. Fidelity, we really take a strong focus on fidelity. We are very strong from the very get-go. They understand, we go over that very initially. If you want to be part of our program, you're gonna use this fidelity instrument, and you have to take it serious. So we have some worksheets that were originally on the RTI website, I believe. I think they're still around. And that have questions, guiding questions. They really tend to use those as they're getting started. After that, they know. The Fidelity rubrics, we have a district and a school one. We have some coaching tools that help our coaches understand what evidence they're going to be looking for. And I actually go out I went to all the districts at first, and now as we've added 3 cohorts, I have 2 colleagues who are also regional coaches that I've trained that also go out, and the 3 of us do all of the Fidelity rubrics for those districts. The coaches do the schools. And so the coaches really have a strong model how to ask critical questions and how to really take a look at that evidence. So, the coaches have to know how to ask probing and clarifying questions. They have to understand how to ask for artifacts or look at artifacts, and how to identify needs, and how to provide performance feedback. So they'll still let you come back again and develop next steps. So that's all a part of our Fidelity system. All that is it's complex, but it is so vitally important that we put it on every coaching session agenda. So when I look at the coaches' agendas, I can always see what aspect of Fidelity that they are working on.
Great. Thank you, Laura. And our final question, and I'd like everyone.
Oh, there was another part to that question.
Oh, sorry.
Mind if I ask it?
Sure.
Answer it. It was I think, what did our data reveal? And I would say that it is that progress monitoring is hard to turn around, and that our folks were having a tough time with our data-based intensifying interventions. That's what I would say. But it also showed that our cohort 3 came to us at a higher level than either cohort 1 or 2. And I think that was because of greater knowledge around the state. So.
Yeah, no, that is interesting and good to know when you're evaluating, right, your work and the impact of your work. Good. So the final question is about the lessons you've learned over time. And Kelsey, if you could release the poll for that, so people could be listening to Laura and also considering what their top lessons learned. So you'll have a chance to mark your top 3 lessons learned from your SPDIG experiences while hearing what Laura's have been.
So building alliances, or I talked about that already. Determining readiness. In cohort 1, we spend a lot of time getting people ready to implement, building local capacity, making coaching sustainable. That's always hard. Avoiding silos and aligning those initiatives, deploying your resources creatively, and employing that flexibility mindset that I didn't have when I was 20, and utilize your TA providers. I can't tell you how much Dr. Tessie Rose Bailey has helped us and members of her staff, and celebrate and share successes.
Yeah, which is what our program area meeting was about. All right, so folks, if you could choose your top 3 and submit it, and then Kelsey's going to share the results. Great. Thank you, Kelsey. So the top one was aligning initiatives. So I'm so glad that you gave us your ideas, your thoughts, your experiences. Making coaching sustainable was the second. Determining readiness, the third. So great. Any ideas you want to give us? Other ideas that you haven't been able to share so far on determining readiness, Laura?
We changed some questions in our application, and we started doing interviews, and it was helpful.
No, that's a really good idea. Love it. Well, we are going to, thank you so much for this interview segment. We don't have to say goodbye to Laura, luckily. We do get to give you an opportunity to think through, let's see. There we go. To think through some questions about coaching prior to hearing Laura give her expertise, knowledge, and the things that they've been using in Georgia. So what we're gonna do breakouts a little differently, because what we've noticed, and I'm sure if I asked you to raise your hand, if this has happened to you in one of your SPDIG trainings, it probably has. What we find is when we do breakouts, because of that expectation of using camera and speaking, and not everyone's in a place where they can do that, etc., we tend to lose some folks after the breakouts. And so we're going to try something new today, see how it goes. You can choose to go into one of the breakout rooms, or you can choose to read this document resource from the Intensive Intervention Center that Laura pulled for us. So be thinking about which one you want to do. So for the breakout rooms, you're going to be renaming yourself if you want to go to a breakout room. So you're going to take your name, your Zoom name, and you're going to add a number at the end of it from 1 to 4. If you choose number 4, you can do your own reading, but this is about answering the questions of the coaching roles your coaches have and the skills needed to fulfill those roles, or the characteristics, what do you want to come in with? If you name yourself with a number 2 at the end, it's going to be, how do we know when our coaches are truly successful? How do we measure that success? So about evaluating coaching. If you name yourself with a number 3 at the end, you want to talk about challenges that coaches navigate and how do you respond? And what evidence do you review to determine what coaches should do and how they're responding to the challenges? And then finally, number 4 is about tools and resources that help coaches to work effectively and efficiently. So you would put a number 4. It's all up to you. All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope those were good conversations or a good read. And Laura wanted to just check in with you all about it.
So I know that these questions were not necessarily easy to answer and to think about in 10 minutes. I'm really guilty of that. But I hope that you had some conversation around it. So does anybody want to share who was in the first group who was thinking about the roles coaches have?
Tammy, go ahead. I like to delegate.
We're all so good at that.
Yeah. Well, one thing in Montana, our coaches, one of their roles is they're also creating our professional development and deliver it as well. So they deliver if we do in-person conferences or trainings or meetings. So in addition to coaching, they help build, and a group of them are delivering our professional development and designing it and working with our content experts to do that. But then then they build the professional development, and then they kind of walk the school districts through the modules that we're building, through the processes and communication plans and all that. So, but one of the items we talked about, or that I shared, was that our coaches, a lot of them were trained under prior SPDIG. So our best resources in the state are the ones we built and trained and built some capacity from prior SPDIG. So that's where that expertise and skill set came from some of our prior work around MTSS.
Right.
So we've been able to keep a lot of them, but some are retired, and which poses some issues, but then also some are working full-time in school districts. So we don't have any full-time dedicated coaches available during the school day. So that can be a limiting factor for us.
Okay.
I just want to add another thing that I think this is very important, that even though we have a lot of people that are experienced and have the expertise, it's how do you build that relationship? You're walking into a new district, a new school. You know how it is as teachers and administrators. You got to build that relationship because you got to change mindsets. So sometimes that takes a whole year or half a year just to build that trust that, oh, we do trust what you're saying. So that's another characteristic of a coach being able to develop that relationship. Anybody else from number 1, breakout room number 1? We've got how many more minutes here we can, no, I'm just.
No. Well, let's move on to questions 2 and 3. 2 was about successes, and 3 was about navigating challenges.
Laura, I was the only one in the 2 breakout rooms, so I spent a few minutes
Jocelyn,
talking
that's
to
you.
myself, and then I came back to the main room.
Okay.
So how'd the conversation go, Jocelyn?
Yeah, it was
Was there a lot of
in-depth
tension
conversation
or?
about effectiveness. But I will say, in Georgia, one of the question was about how do you know when coaching is effective, and we triangulate the data. So we have a self-assessment and the observation, and Laura does the observation using the high quality coaching assessment. And then we also ask participating personnel, like a stakeholder survey, to get participant feedback of those who are coached. So that's all.
Okay, good.
As
Good. Good
always,
to
thank
see
you for
Jocelyn.
your help. Anybody in 3?
There was one room that did, oh no, it looks like we do have a 3. Yeah. Sorry, I think 4, we didn't end up having anyone in, but 3 we did.
Okay.
There was about 7 of us in there. I was in it.
It was popular.
Yeah, would anybody like to speak up? There was a lot of different ideas about how they were collecting data, like coaching logs and sorry, I can't remember it all offhand. Please feel free to speak up, others. Oh, satisfaction surveys,
Okay.
coaching action plans.
Yeah, I think a lot of people spoke of tools. The tools and resources were there to support coaching, but the challenges were readiness for implementation, capacity for coaching, turnovers, with all different levels of staff, including coaches, were some of the challenges. But it seemed like everybody was really good on tools. Like we have data collection tools, we have the surveys, we have coaching logs, coach service delivery plans. Those tools and resources are there, but it's the capacity and readiness that
Okay.
more of a challenge.
Thanks.
And what,
And-
Laura, I just want to make a
Yes.
point that that's pretty interesting because nobody chose to go into room 4, which is about
Oh,
tools for
Okay.
effective.
That is
I guess we got
interesting.
the
Yeah,
tools.
I guess we
That's a
got them.
resounding answer.
All right. And then for the folks who are doing the reading,
We
anybody?
did have a few of us in room 4. We did end up with a few
Oh,
people.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Brandy.
No, that's okay. So our group spent a lot of time lamenting about the challenges of having internal coaches versus contracted coaches, and how those internal people often get pulled into substituting or covering lunch duty or all of those other tasks that go into being at the school. And we didn't really come up with a good answer, but we talked a lot about it. I did share, I know it said other than training and resources, but all of our instructional coaches with all of our initiatives go through the Jackson Consulting coaching training. And it just comes with this really nice, practical, hands-on approach to coaching. So coaches can walk right into the building with tools they can use to collect data and have those conversations with teachers.
Okay. Thanks. And I guess does that get everybody? Did anybody want to contribute anything about the reading? Okay. We'll move on.
All right, we're going to turn things over to you, Laura. You can go ahead and share your screen and get us some in-depth learning about how you're supporting your coaches in Georgia.
All right. Do you see the slideshow?
Yes, we do. It looks great.
Okay. All right. So I don't have to reintroduce myself, but I would say there's my email if you need it. And just something to think about. And we ask this all the time. How does a coach contribute to successful implementation? So I'll talk around these topics about how we develop content knowledge and expertise, our coaching foundations, some considerations, how we focus on coaching for implementation, tools and resources. Sounds like we got a lot of those, and reflections and next steps. So, and this was one of the questions, one of the groups, what does a coach need to be successful? Well, they're going to need to engage in professional learning and in its deep content, knowledge, and expertise. And you talked about, I forgot someone was talking about having coaches who come to us, who've been with us for a while. And so we've already developed that content, knowledge, and expertise, and how that supports it. So that's our the model that we use from the National Center. And it is, you'll see in this next slide, all these different things that we ask our coaches to know about. And like some others, they're also sometimes trainers. So they have to be able to pull this information out of their hip pocket very quickly in the moment of their coaching conversations. So we have essential components. We have these deeper dives that we went through, that we like monitoring fidelity, middle and high schools, what it's like to refining, using the IES practice guides to refine evidence-based practices. We also have this deeper look. I talked about progress monitoring, and we developed this deeper look at progress monitoring. And another thing, I think as we added cohort 3, we looked at it, and suddenly 43% of our schools were middle and high schools. So we had to really do some more there. And we have to be prepared to adjust that all the time based on the needs of our folks. I went through sustainability planning already. So this just are the slides that supports that, but that's the other thing we ask our coaches to be prepared to support: context and culture, the organizational capacity and performance processes. And here are those, each one of those listed out for you. I won't go back over those, but we also, another consideration is that they have to develop deep foundational coaching skills, and that's alliance building. And I think Earl was talking about building those relationships and trust and communication, being able to ask questions, that effective teaming. They also have to have a coaching cycle that's pretty simplistic. We happen to use Jim Knight's, but there are others that are readily available, that they need to understand what are the things they need to be asking about. Are they planning, acting, analyzing, and reflecting? What do they need to be doing as a coach in each one of those sections of the coaching cycle? This is our coaching foundations. Implementation science, adult learning principles, high quality professional learning, and high quality coaching. I do want to just give a shout out to Brent and Jocelyn, Brent Garrett and Jocelyn Coolidge, about in Georgia. They are a part of our team. They are our thought partners as well as our evaluators, and they help us along the way to say, what are the really great things that we can do to elevate our coaching all the time? Our coaches need time to practice and refine coaching skills, whether it's prompting, fluency building, performance feedback, and adaptation. And I just read a blurb about some research that's emerging, that how long it takes to build a synapses. It might be 400 trials, but if you put that in a game format, it's only about 20 trials to build a synapse. And so I'm thinking about how I can do this, make this stronger. And I know when I put things into a bingo format or something like that, how our coaches gravitate toward them. Clarify the role of the coach. And that was one of the questions, and we heard that. We are systems coaches. Jennifer, did you have a question?
I did, but you had already passed the slide, so I wasn't sure. I didn't want to stop you, but
No,
I was
go
just
ahead.
wondering, just because it's a need of mine, asking powerful questions or asking good questions, are there any resources you recommend for that, since you're working with coaches to build that skill?
There are two that there's the Better Conversations with Jim Knight. It's an old book.
Mhm.
And there's also Crucial Conversations. I can't think of
Yep.
the author right now, but those are some of that what we go through. There's also a I think their coat is called Coaching Habits. It has a colon and something else. That's a book that has 7 questions that are really powerful that our coaches use.
Great, thank you for that.
For our coaches, they are systems coaches. So they are working with teams of districts and schools. And so they have to understand MTSS essential components and the implementation science. They have to be able to meet with teams and to observe and coach implementation, have knowledge of that local context and the stakeholders. They have to allocate time needed for the level of intensity being provided and use data to support implementation. They're focused on some different questions than instructional coaches. And it is this benefiting all students? And do we have a healthy system? Are we implementing MTSS as intended? That's really important. And so, and sometimes our coaches wear multiple hats. It's a little bit of a messy business. They might, our district coaches might be, or our school coaches might be also coordinating, having to do a lot of coordination. And I talked about that a little earlier. We also want to make sure that our coaches are involved in network opportunities, and we have monthly coaching clinics. And it's amazing how readily these coaches turn on their mics, turn on their cameras, ask questions. We just finished with making this year a success, but you can see our topics. And new to us is this online professional learning community for MTSS that we have through a bigger platform called Georgia Learns. I can't say enough about how important it is to nurture new coaches. We were all prepared, had a great plan, and then COVID hit. So things shifted for us when we just hired 2 new coaches, or our last 2 coaches that we hired. But what I recommend is that there's daily contact for the first week, and then meet weekly for the first 3 months, bi-weekly for 4 to 6 months, and then provide customized learning. We have met monthly for over the course of 2 years, and our new coaches have mentors, and they shadow all of our coaches, and they have time to observe, and that's really important. Leveraging existing resources and supports, and I talked about really relying on our TA providers. So we rely heavily. I mentioned Dr. Tessie Rose Bailey's brought us a wealth of information and helped support our coaches till they could become trainers of the information themselves. Tools and resources, and what do we have? We have a step-by-step guidance document that coaches can use. We have fact sheets, MTSS snapshots, newsletters, and it's interesting how these are being used by coaches out in the districts and schools. So one coach takes our snapshots, she sends it out at the first of the week, and then on Friday she has a brief meeting with all the coaches, and they talk about that and contextualize that topic to their own school and their district. And we talked about you talked about some of the resources and how we had a lot of resources available. Our fact sheets are 1 to 2 pages, and they use those in the districts and schools. They need quick, palatable, approachable information. Our website has a host of information on it, and it has, I invite you to check it out. You can also click on and see our professional learning. It is amazing how frequently people are accessing and using this information. And number 8 is that all of our coaches have an action plan. So I invite you to put in the chat right now, what is the action step you will take? Sorry.
And Laura, did you see the question from Brandy about if you wouldn't mind sharing the guidance documents and fact sheets? Was that all on the website you just shared?
It's all on the website.
Okay. I
It's
wanted to
all
make
on the
sure.
website. So
And
yes. Is there another question?
no, it's just there were 2 comments. One that someone, Laura Bray was saying that Better Conversations has been great for them. And then Lee Stickle from Kansas was saying that Elena Aguilar has great info on coaching teams as well.
Okay, great. So your possible next steps, I don't know what, please put one in the chat, is that re-examine the PL provided for your coaches, or help coaches refine their coaching skills that they use in their coaching cycle, clarifying their coaching roles, develop network opportunities, nurture new coaches, leverage existing resources, developing an action plan for your coaches. And collectively, our coaches work together to develop an action plan and steps for their professional learning that we will embark on for the whole year. Resource leveraging, action plans, tools and resources. Oh, 2, 3, and 7. All right. Clarifying roles. Well, great. Number 1, re-examining the PL that is provided. So I just ask you just to think about today, how does a coach contribute to successful implementation in your SPDIG work? And just to reflect on it over the next couple of weeks and eyeball where you see it happening. So I think that's got me, Jennifer. I think my last ones just say, have our standard piece on there. So thank you.
Although I don't think I get the project officer
Oh, you don't get
recognition anymore. That's Anita Vermeer.
Anita for us, isn't it?
Yeah. But thank you so much, everyone, for interacting and engaging. And again, thank you to Laura for quickly putting together the information folks have been asking for. These conversations are so, when we invite external people to come in, it's always great. Well, it's typically, it's good, but we don't know if it's going to get straight to the needs that we have for SPDIGs, for the work that you do in states. And this is so great having project folks from SPDIGs come and talk about their work, because we always know that folks are going to come away with something new that they can use, that it's going to speak to a challenge they've been facing. And Laura did that today. We've covered sustainability, alignment, fidelity, a lot about coaching, and those useful tips at the end were so nice just to map it out, because it can feel a little overwhelming. How much you need to do to create, not create, but to further develop people who can then go out and do the good work in the district schools, the early childhood programs. So thank you, Laura. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Kelsey, for organizing this and helping it to run so smoothly. And again, thanks for all the folks who were able to share with us and engage in different ways. And we will see. Oh, I have one final slide about next month that I forgot to share. And now you see my calendar. Okay. So next month, we have New Jersey SPDIG. Lou Pereira from the Jersey SPDIG, he's the project director there, is going to be sharing what he's learned so far. And then tips and tools will be with Karen Erickson and Claire Greer from UNC. And they're going to be talking about the Tar Heel Reader, which is accessible for, they've worked on accessibility for kids who are deaf and blind, all different access needs they have considered when creating these tools. So we look forward to seeing you next month, if not before, and have a good afternoon, everyone.